Thank you for watching the video and welcome back to the Legacy Discussion Circle. It's been a while since we put anything out on this platform. I just thought, that we should put this one out so that we can. I wanted to address, something that I've noticed recently that's in response to the presidency of Muhammadu Buhari and the northern hegemony activities. People have been calling for southern solidarity as a response to that, or a southern hegemony, if you like. So I thought to put out this video to establish four things. The title of the video is "The Opposite of North is Nigeria and not South." The opposite of North is Nigeria and not South, or the opposite of northern hegemony is Nigeria and not southern hegemony, if you like. Now, this video is basically to establish four things. Number one, that the idea of a political north is a fact and not a fallacy. That the idea of a political north is a fact and not a fallacy. Number two, that there is no political south in the sense that there is a political north. That there is no political south in the sense that there is a political north. Number three is that in the political north there is a northern hegemony. That the existence of a northern hegemony, or northern feudalist, if you like, within the idea of the political north, but not everyone is a part of the northern hegemony. In other words, there's a northern hegemony in the political north, but not everyone is a part of the northern hegemony within that political north. That is to say that there are other ideologies, or there are people who have other interests within that political north who are not a part of the northern hegemony. And number four is as an outflow. Number four is as an outflow of that, which is to say that the South must find allies within that political north in order for Nigeria to work, or in order for them to advance their ideas. Now, of course, it is taken for granted that when you talk about north, there's definitely a south. When you talk about opposite ideas, so there's a north, there's a south, there's an east, there's a west. But the idea of a political north is a fact, and it is something that started several years ago, many centuries ago, about 2 centuries ago, in fact, in the year 1803, when the Sokoto Caliphate began with the activities, or with the jihad, if you like. Some call it a jihad, some call it an Islamic revolution. It was a religious revolution started by Uthman Dan Fodio. Some call him Uthman Dan Fodio, some call him Usman Dan Fodio. Now, Usman Dan Fodio was a cleric, if you like. He was a leader of the Muslim faith. He operated in a town called Gobir, and he was in that town for a while, teaching the people the precepts of Islam, until a point where he led a revolution. That revolution removed the emir of Gobir, and then they put another emir. Now, what they did was, the Fulanis, Uthman Dan Fodio was a Fulani, and so the Fulanis began to rule over the people. They conquered a lot of territories across the north. As a matter of fact, they went as far as the northeast, where the Kanem Borno Empire was at that time. The Kanem Borno Empire was advanced, by Idris Aluma. Idris Aluma was a great warrior, and he was a conqueror. He founded the Kanem Borno Empire in the northeastern part of the north. Now, as at the time the jihad of Uthman Dan Fodio came there, Idris Aluma was no more. But when he got to the Kanem Borno Empire and, was saying that he had come to revolutionize Islam, they said, look, we are practicing Islam here. As a matter of fact, a lot of people used to go for pilgrimages to Mecca, so much so that under the time of Idris Aluma, they had a facility there in Mecca where pilgrims from the Kanem Borno Empire could stay. They had a facility there. So if you went on pilgrimage to Mecca, you could stay in those facilities if you were from the Kanem Borno Empire. And that was all the idea of Idris Aluma. So they felt they were practicing Islam. But in any case, what the revolution of Ahmadu Bello did was to unite the city-states, the empires of the north, and make them one, in terms of he brought them on the same religious page. And so that was a religious revolution, but at the same time it was political, because the leadership of most places, the leaders were deposed, and then they imposed emirs on those territories. In other words, political power as at that time, which was rested in hands of the traditional authorities, changed hands to the emirs that were imposed by Usman Dan Fodio during that revolution. And then it also had a third dimension, which was the cultural dimension of it. In all the places they went, the Fulanis invariably took over and became the ruling class. And then also they adopted the Hausa language as a more general language, or as a more popular language. So that was the cultural part of that revolution. It was the Hausa language. As a matter of fact, the Fulani language is Fufude, or what you call the Fula language. But it is not all Fulanis who are in existence today know how to speak that language, that Fufude language. Hausa is the language that is spoken. So he managed to unite them politically, he managed to unite them in terms of religion, and then he managed also to forge a cultural sense of unity. And that was the first wave of unification. The North has had about 2 or 3 waves of unification. The first is the one that I just explained, that started in 1803 with Usman Dan Fodio. The second wave of unification was the one that happened with Ahmadu Bello. Ahmadu Bello was a descendant of Usman Dan Fodio, and he wanted to advance the work that his ancestor had started, but he was going to do this politically. Okay, he was going to do this politically, and he set up, he worked with others. The political party actually existed before he came on the scene, but he managed to become the head of that political party, managed to become the president of that political party, as it was called at that time in 1958, I believe. In 1958, he became the president of the Northern People's Congress. His political party was called Northern People's Congress. In other words, there was no pretension to any idea of Nigeria. He simply wanted to protect the interests of the people of the North within the political space of Nigeria. Of course, this is distinct from what happened in the South, where you had parties like the Action Group, which had a manifesto that was more nationalistic in terms of scope, and then you had Nnamdi Azikiwe, who was the most nationalist of them all, who had the political party called the NCNC, the National Council of Nigerians and Cameroons initially, then later became the National Council of Nigerian citizens, the National Council of Nigerian Citizens afterwards. Now, these two parties of the South had nationalist ideas, but as far as Ahmadu Bello was concerned, the Jamiya Mutanen Arewa, which is also the name that the Northern People's Congress was called, Jamiya Mutanen Arewa, was essentially formed with a focus on protecting the interests of the North within the space of within the political space of Nigeria. Now, you can argue with a lot of things about Ahmadu Bello, but you cannot doubt, his fidelity to what he believed in. He believed that as a descendant of Ahmadu Bello, it was his duty to unite the North, and he advanced, the territories of the North by assimilating, or by bringing in politically, people who are part of what we today refer to as the Middle Belt, or the North Central. They brought in different parties that were there at that time. The Bira People's Union. They had a lot of people across that Middle Belt space, and the motto of the party that he formed at that time, the Northern People's Congress, was One North, One Destiny, One People, and so on and so forth. The short form of that motto was One North, One Destiny. One North, One Destiny. And so he forged a political union, he forged a political North, at that time within the First Republic. In the South, there was no counterpart of that. Historically, the South has always been as divided as any group of people. Of course, in the North, you have as many ethnicities in the South as you have in the North. But like I just showed, in the North, you've had those waves of unification that have managed to unite the North. Some say that the third wave of unification started sometime around 2001, 2002, when under the tenure of President Olusegun Obasanjo, where the North felt, we need to assert ourselves so that we stop his second term and then bring in someone, and the person they chose was Muhammadu Buhari at that time, and he began to lead the North. And ever since that time, you've had a renewed sense of a political North within the space of Nigeria. Whereas the idea of a political South has never really existed. First of all, you had no Usman Dan Fodio, who forged that sense of a united religion, that sense of a united traditional authority, and that sense of a shared culture, or a shared language, if you like. Now, it never happened in the South. What you had were people who were historically different and who have remained distinctly different within the Nigerian space as at that time. In fact, as at the Second Republic in 1983, when political parties came on the scene, of course, Ahmadu Bello had been tragically killed. Before that time, he had been killed in the coup of 1966. Tafawa Balewa had also been killed. But when the political formations came, the only national party, or the major national party at that time, was the National Party of Nigeria, the NPN. Now, you also had a party by Chief Obafemi Awolowo, which was essentially a Western region party, or a party for the Southwest, which was called the Unity Party of Nigeria at that time. And then, of course, you had Nnamdi Azikwe's party. He was still alive, and the other two giants, Awolowo and Azikwe, were still alive. So Azikwe also had his own party, the NPP, the National People's Party, and then you also had the other political parties, Greater Nigeria People's Party, and one other one. There were 5 political parties as of 1979, at the beginning of the Second Republic. Now, within the National People's Party, within the NPN, when the idea of zoning was to come into effect, the North chose to remain one, while the South chose to be in 3 divisions, or to be in 3 zones. So the North remained one, the South went into 3 divisions. And so when they were going to zone positions, the presidency was zoned to the North, the national chairmanship of the party was zoned to the Southwest, the Senate presidency was zoned to the South-South, and the Southeast got the vice presidency, which is how Dr. Alex Ekweme emerged as the vice president under President Shehu Shagari at that time. But the North chose to remain one, even as at that time. It wasn't until the end of, towards the tail end of that republic around 1983, that the North said, look, South is getting 3 positions, we also want to get 3 positions, so we are going to have the idea of North Central, we'll have Northeast, and then we'll have Northwest. Okay, so essentially, the idea of a political North has always existed, but there has never been any counterpart in terms of a political South. The idea of a political South has never existed. However, within that political North, not everybody has always subscribed to the idea of Northern hegemony. Yes, you had the Northern People's Congress, which was the mainstream political party at that time. And a couple of years ago, I began to talk more about the NEPU faction, which existed during the First Republic. That was the Northern Elements Progressive Union, which was led by Aminu Kano. The Northern Elements Progressive Union, he formed that party with progressive ideals. Now, they did not rely as much as Ahmadu Bello did. They did not rely on the political party of, did not rely on the support. They did not rely on the support of traditional authorities, unlike Ahmadu Bello's party. Ahmadu Bello was a conservative. Of course, and in subsequent editions, I will discuss him in depth, because I remember, as a matter of fact, one of the first conversations that I had with our colleague, brother, Dadiata, who's now been abducted, who's now been, he has been vanished. We pray that God brings him back to us. One of the first conversations that we had at that time was a particular autobiography that I wanted in my library, the autobiography of the Sardauna, Ahmadu Bello. I wanted his autobiography, and I asked Dadiata for that, but he couldn't lay his hand on it at that time. But he was a phenomenon, but not everybody agreed with him. Had people within the political North who had more progressive ideas, or who had ideas that were progressive as against the conservative ideals of Ahmadu Bello. One of them was Aminu Kano, Malam Aminu Kano, who was the leader of the Northern Elements Progressive Union. Another one was Saadu Zungur. you had a lot of them. You had a number of them, who were there, and they came together from mostly within the Kano axis. At some point they were in Bauchi, but they found themselves and they came together and formed the Northern Elements Progressive Union. Now their ideas were unassailable by the Ahmadu Bello camp because they were learned in terms of Islamic theology. You couldn't fault the Islamic theology of an Aminu Kano. You couldn't fault the Islamic theology of Saadu Zungur because they were Malams. They were people who were trained in actual Islamic theology. As a matter of fact, Aminu Kano's mother and even his grandmother knew how to write fluently the Arabic script. They knew how to write in Arabic language. So they came from a family of scholars, and people looked up to them. And when they started to say some things, people began to listen to them. Their party actually attracted a lot of women because, as at that time, the freedoms of women in the north were greatly curtailed. Women couldn't vote, for instance. Women couldn't be seen in public. But someone like Aminu Kano went on a tour of Bauchi and he took his wife along with him, and she was seen in public. And he said, look, this is not in line with Islamic theology, and people could not fault what he was saying. So there was also that element within the north. That element also existed at that time. It wasn't that all of them, the entire north was conservative, or the entire north had that hegemonistic ideal, which I showed. Even though Ahmadu Bello had started it in the First Republic, by the time it came to the Second Republic, they developed a more national or a more nationalistic ideal because they realized that they needed votes from everywhere. And so a lot of people within the political north, they presented candidates who were progressive. They presented candidates who were liberal. They presented candidates who were not in line with the conservative ideals that the north had started with as at that time. Of course, Ahmadu Bello was doing it. He had done it, to protect the north because he saw that the south was more educated than the north, at that time in terms of Western education, and that, look, if this thing happens here, these southerners would invade and then they would take the jobs away from the northerners. They would take jobs that, northerners could get at that time. So he was trying to protect himself, or trying to protect the ethnicity within that political space called Nigeria. So the fact of a political north has always existed. Secondly, there has never really been a political south in the sense that that there is a political north. And then thirdly, not everybody in the political north agrees with the ideals of northern hegemony. Now, what has happened over the years is that people have tried to bring up the idea of southern solidarity, or this idea of a political south in response to a political north. It is not a new idea. It is something that has always come up. We've shown already that historically there has never been that sense of southern solidarity in the sense that there has been that sense of a northern solidarity. The second thing that militates against it, or the second thing that stands against this idea of southern solidarity, is because the south has advanced beyond the period where you want a unity or you want a unification. We are no longer in the age of Uthman Danfodio, where you can force people to think in one direction. That period has gone. That ship has sailed, as it were. It happened in 1803. South never had any such thing. And so bringing up that idea now, to a lot of people, there will always be divisions. Why? Because Southerners do not have that sense of solidarity anymore. As a matter of fact, even within states, within single states in the South, you would have divisions, people who want to think differently. Even within a family, you have people of different political persuasions. The elder brother is in one party, the younger brother is in one party, the father belongs to one party or belongs to one political ideology or political tendency, and somebody else belongs to another, the son, belongs to another political tendency. You cannot go back and say, put everything else aside and let us, come together. Of course, you can have that posturing. But the result of that posturing over the years, every time there's that idea of a southern solidarity because of political exigencies, you always find one group or a group of people within the South who will align with the North, in any kind of arrangement. Sometimes it puts the South, it puts someone from the South in a good position, like it happened for General Olusegun Obasanjo. The Southwest did not support him, but he had massive support from the North as a 1999 to win. Alex Ekwueme, as the vice president, in order for him to become vice president, he also found tendencies within the North where his political views were accommodated, or where he could express his political views, and he aligned with them, and he became vice president. Those are two examples of people who have understood how Nigeria works, and they pushed for political power within the expression of how it is, out of political reality. So when people talk of this idea, I think, it robs us of, facing reality. Yes, it is something that, who wouldn't want the idea of a political South? Everyone would want that idea, but the foundations are simply not there. And if you start to lay the foundations now, you can never catch up with a place where, they had been forged deliberately into being the political North at that time. And so, rather than, trying to form a political South, people from the South who have similar tendencies or who have similar ideologies should aggregate themselves politically and find allies of that ideology within the North. Like I said, there are several tendencies within the political North. At a time when people thought, some freedoms should not be available to the people, some others felt that we need to advance this course in that setting, in that progressive direction, and they were able to. They recorded some success. As a matter of fact, in the Second Republic, Aminu Kano's political parties dominated Kano. They dominated Kano naturally because that was where he was from, and they had great following there. And then they also managed to win in Kaduna, which is a story for another day. But they managed to win in Kaduna, which was the People's Redemption Party. That was the fifth political party as at that time in the Second Republic. So you've always had those tendencies, but we rob ourselves of the ability to see those tendencies when we simply dismiss the whole thing as, oh, it is a northern agenda. And here is the bigger problem. The moment you position yourself in opposition to something, you are abandoning what defines you, and you are leaving that space for the pretenders to occupy, which is exactly what is going on presently within the Nigerian polity. Because the northern hegemonists are in power, the hegemonists from the political North, not all northerners are political are hegemonists, but the hegemonists within the political North are in power presently, and we have ceded. A lot of people have ceded the idea of Nigeria, or the idea of patriotism, to them. What now happens is that they are the ones who are defining Nigeria, while they are forcing everyone else into ethnic enclaves, and they are using that the first posturing, the posture where they have put some people in. They are using it to win more advocates for their northern hegemony, pointing to every little action and saying, oh, we told you, these southerners cannot be trusted. This is why we have to do this. This is why we have to do that. They are thinking about themselves. They are using it to justify, and then it becomes a cycle. It becomes a cycle. What we need is people who will realize the truth of what I'm saying here, which is what I also came to discover after a period of research, that the opposite of North is not South, but rather it is Nigeria. The opposite of the political North is the idea of a Nigeria, and that is a space that we must not concede. In other words, we must not allow the northern hegemonies to define what being a Nigerian is. We should be the ones to define it on the basis of ideology which is shared all over the country. Human nature is constant. Not everything for everyone is ethnic, not everything for everyone is political, not everything for everyone is religious. So somebody who is hungry or somebody who is poor, if he sees an opportunity to become wealthy by association with some people down south, not everybody is going to reject it on the basis of ethnicity, or on the basis of religion, or on the basis of political differences. So you can always find allies. But many of us want to shut our minds and think, oh, they're all that way. It's a lazy way of thinking. It's not a logical way of thinking, and the end result of it is still not tenable. It is something that has been tried. A lot of people have tried it. I mean, this generation is not the first, or this generation is not the first to bring up that idea. I remember, as a matter of fact, that in one of the editions of Tell magazine or the news, I can't remember. Odumegu Ojukwu, he granted, that was the Biafra leader, he granted an interview where he expressed sentiments that he wanted a situation where Ohaneze and Afenifere will come together and you have something like Ohanefere, and that was what he was saying, at that time. The idea of a southern solidarity has always existed, but what happens over time is that people within the South are using it to position themselves in order to negotiate with willing partners up north and to win power. And that was what happened to Bola Ahmed Tinubu with the Action Congress. They aligned with the feudalists in the north, thinking that power will be shared and they would also be in power. But the reality today is that they simply facilitated the entrance of the northern hegemonists into political power, and everyone can see the result today. So that is usually what happens. The basis of coming together has to be a shared ideology or shared principle or shared core values within the political space. In other words, you look for people who believe as you do from all over the entire country. Make sure that you try to get that majority there, and that is how you advance a political cause. The opposite of North is Nigeria and not South. We should, of course, point out that it is not a position of weakness. It is not a position of foolishness either. We recognize that there are different tendencies within the country. We recognize the existence of the northern hegemonists within the political north, and we recognize the existence of cultural interests. We recognize that no matter how much you say that you are a Nigerian, some people will always see you as Yoruba, or some people will always see you as Igbo first, and that's okay, because it is who we are. We do not deny those ethnic realities or the realities of who we are, but we understand that within the political space of Nigeria, which we operate in as a reality presently, to advance our ideals, we have to find allies from the entire country who believe in the same principles or in the same ideology or in the same ideals or share the same core values as we do. And that is something that is important to note. And so, to round it up, I would say that this might be against the natural instincts of many people. It's easier today to preach, southern, a political South or a southern hegemony in response to the northern hegemony. That's a more popular message, and that's the politically correct thing to say, so everybody wants to be politically correct. You come out and you shout, Yoruba solidarity, Igbo solidarity, Niger Delta solidarity, and people from the South, like that. In actual sense, it has not worked before, and I do not see it working. It might work at some point in future, but understand that culturally, historically, and politically, we have had diverse tendencies in the South. What those people are trying to do is to rewind the clock, to make people believe in one central idea. The interests of the Igbos, for instance, within the political space of Nigeria is not the same with the interests of the Yorubas. Of course, you can argue that there are points of similarities, but again, the Yorubas can find points of similarities with the North also, and try to advance their own cause within that arrangement, which is what Bola Ahmed Tinubu tried to do, which is what SL Akintola also tried to do. Of course, at some point, you had Aro Dapabiriye, who was the leader of the Niger Delta Congress, the NDC, as a 1958, and they aligned with the Northern People's Congress, to form, and to form a political alliance for power, at that time. After independence, or during the period shortly before independence, Nnamdi Azikiwe also formed an alliance of the NCNC with the MPC, and they managed a sort of power sharing arrangement at that time. But in reality, in the long term, it is not sustainable. When you form an alliance on the basis of only political power, it is not sustainable, as recent experiences in Nigeria have shown. So thinkers about Nigeria should cast their minds towards doing the hard work, of finding allies across the entire country who believe in central ideals, or who believe in shared core values and core ideals that can work within the political space of Nigeria. So I'm sure that I'm going to get a lot of feedback, on this video. I look forward to that. I look forward to getting the feedback. If I feel it's something that we need to address, we'll do another video. We'll do a part 2 of this video for next week. If it is not, we'll move on to something else and we'll discuss something else, maybe along the lines of what we've discussed today, or something else within the polity entirely. But I hope to be constant with this, over the next couple of months, because I think now is the time, and now I also have a lot of free time. So we'll be doing this more regularly, and next week definitely we are going to bring another video under the legacy discussion circle, under the banner of the legacy discussion circle. So I thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. Feel free to share this with people. Feel free to share it with your friends. Feel free to debate it. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter at Demola Riwaju, I'm sure you know, or on Facebook or anywhere, and let us discuss. Let's discuss more on these ideas. What would be truly disappointing would be for people to just dismiss the idea, and embrace the other form of populist thinking, which is them trying to be politically correct, as far as I'm concerned, by posturing as Southern nationalist or Southern hegemonist, as against Nigerian, being a Nigerian nationalist, which is not even a popular thing now anyway. So they are the ones trying to be politically correct. So till I come your way again next week, my name is Demola Olariwaju, and I thank you very much for watching, and I thank you very much for joining in.